Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude and Margery Eagan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library in Copley Square tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday, May 9th for Governor Moore Healey and May 13th for Attorney General Andrea Campbell. They'll both be at the Boston Public Library. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Margery. Since Trump took office in January, he's embarked on this massive shift of global policy, perhaps none more profound than in Russia's savage war against Ukraine. You may recall that stunning Oval Office stunt in February with Ukrainian President Zelensky, leading to Trump's seeming complete public shift in support for the Ukrainians' fight for democracy and siding with his murderous friend, Vladimir Putin. In the weeks since, it's been a roller coaster, with U.S. officials pushing for a ceasefire at seemingly any cost for Ukraine. And then one day he's saying Russia doesn't want a deal. This morning he's saying that Zelensky has agreed to give up Crimea, which Zelensky says is not true. In any case, meanwhile, at the front lines, war wages on into its third year with thousands dead. We're joined on Studio 3 for a conversation about the war and the future of Ukraine with Vsevolod Petriv. He's president of the Boston chapter of the Ukrainian Congress Committee. It's great to see you again, Vsevolod. Thanks for being here. Brian Nolan is the founder of New Hampshire for Ukraine, and it's an aid group. He just returned from a year-long stay delivering aid to the front lines. Brian, great to meet you. And Vsevolod, great to have you back. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you.
Great to be
thank
here.
you both for coming in. So let's start with you. As Jim said, we've been all back and forth all over the place. Where are we right now, do you think, in terms of getting some kind of peace agreement?
Difficult times, I would say. I'm sure people are looking forward to some sort of peace agreement if it can be found. But everybody's pretty skeptical of exactly what motivates our current administration in terms of what they envision as a peace agreement.
How is Trump viewed by the Ukrainian people?
At this point, often more as a clown. There was some initial hope. I have to admit, there was some initial hope when he was coming in. There was thoughts saying that, okay, we know what happened with Biden. There was always enough help, but not enough to really win. Now Trump says he can really do something.
Said he was going to fix it on day one, if you recall.
Sure. So maybe he's got something going. And then once he got going, it was like, oh. You know?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Speaking with people on the ground over there, they didn't really know what to make of Trump the first term, because, of course, the war wasn't going on then. When this blow-up at the White House happened, that really cemented people's opinion against him and also increased Zelensky's
From
popularity.
57 to 67% overnight.
Yeah. Oh, you mean it's not
approval
4% like Trump mentioned?
But what Brian says is true, is that Trump is also saying Zelensky's support back home was in single digits, and why don't they have an election? Because the policy in Ukraine is not have an election in times of war, obviously.
Exactly.
Well, so explain to people why Crimea matters so much, because I know that Zelensky said, no, that's not going to happen. What would that mean for Crimea if Russians were to get that permanently?
I mean, the Crimeans have been suffering heavily under the occupation. So that's one. Two, I think it's more the notion of giving territory to a bully. And so if you give him that, then why not give him something else? So my guess is they're just saying, no, stop at the Crimea.
It's just not just about Ukraine. Putin violated international law in doing this. And if he's rewarded for his violations of law, then it's incentive for other Putin-esque behavior. Yeah. How did you get started in this aid effort in New Hampshire? What do you do for a living?
Well, this is my life nowadays.
What was your life?
I was semi-retired at the time. I had a commercial contracting business for many years.
Semi-retired?
And
You're awful young to be semi-retired.
It's
obviously
genetics.
you did well.
Genetics, okay.
Okay, and then
I'm in my 60s.
So what made you change course?
I think, like a lot of people, I was sick of watching what was unfolding on TV, and I'm a little bit of a World War II buff, and it reminded me so much of Nazi Germany invading Poland in 1939, and watching these poor villages being shelled relentlessly by Russia. So I didn't really know anything about Ukraine. I don't have any history, no relations over there. But I started reading up about the country, And it's not a wealthy country. Per capita income is like $7,000 a year or something like that. But watching these people lose everything, their home is everything out in the villages. So I just had to get involved. Doing nothing was not an option.
So what did you first do?
So I donated, and then I decided to get involved. I started looking at Facebook groups, see where I could do the most good at that moment. At that moment, this is about 2 weeks after the war started. I booked a ticket to Poland. I rented a passenger van in Berlin, Germany. They were all sold out in Poland. Flew to Berlin, drove across Poland, got busy working at a large refugee center at the border, because that's when Kyiv was still under attack. So there was a big outflux of people. Millions of people were leaving Ukraine. They needed a lot of help. It was a 1,500-bed refugee center. So we launched a GoFundMe, ended up raising about $70,000. So we bought almost everything they needed there at the refugee center. I came back, and then a month later, a friend of mine came with me back to Ukraine again, and we started going into Ukraine. And then by the fall of 2022, we ended up in Kharkiv, big city in the northeastern corner of the country. And that's my home away from home now. I just spent a year there. I have an apartment there. I bought a van. And we have a nice operation going now. We've made a lot of contacts in all specters of the society. We work with some military units to get access to the frontline villages. So basically, the way we work is we're a nonprofit. We get donations from people who care about Ukraine.
Of things or of cash?
No, mainly cash.
And then you buy things.
It's too expensive to transport things. It's not practical unless you're doing a large shipping container. So really, cash is the best way. Spend it in Ukraine, you get a huge bang for the buck. The hryvnia, the local currency, is now trading at about 42 to $1, and you can buy a lot for $1 over there. And we buy all wholesale goods. We go out to the frontline villages about twice a week. We bag up about 80 or 100 bags with some other aid. And I have a contact in the military. A military chaplain guides us to the villages.
The website, I can see on your shirt, is NH4, the number 4, NH4Ukraine.org. Yep. Brian, I know you won't take this the wrong way, but for people who are concerned about donating to nonprofits, how do they know you're legit?
Well, we're an affiliate of a 501c3 that vets all our purchases, United Ukraine. All the information is on our donate page on the website. So basically the way it works is I buy everything we need over there. Once a month, I submit a reimbursement request with all the receipts. They go over all the receipts. It's all just...
So they can check out the website.
Yeah.
You know, Sevelo, we've talked about this a lot on the air, even though not nearly as much as we should in the early parts of the war. And I try to imagine myself, if this was happening to us, and I felt that when we were on the evening news every night, everybody was saying important and supportive things about Ukrainians, and then it faded and faded and faded and faded. Starting with you and then with Brian, do the Ukrainian people feel that the people of the United States have abandoned them? Is it you don't want to say it, or you don't know the answer?
They feel they're nervous about the government.
A little closer to the mic.
They're nervous about the government, clearly. But those who have contacts with people here know that those people are still helping them.
How about you, Brian? What do you feel?
I think they're just confused by what's going on. They can't make heads or tails of Trump. Who can nowadays, right? He shifts with the winds. It's like the last guy in the room is the one that influences on the way out. You know, he's got this clown Witkoff going over and
real estate
guy. He couldn't even name. He was on Tucker Carlson. He couldn't even name the oblasts, the regions that Russia laid claim to. He knows nothing about Ukraine. He's getting played like a fiddle.
And he says, by the way, one of his quotes was, "I trust him."
Yeah.
Sort of like, what did Bush say? "I've seen his soul," or whatever that was.
Looked at his eyes.
I do wonder, we speculate a lot about why Trump is so enamored of Putin, and people say it's because he's a strongman kind of thing. But do you think the Ukrainians have any insight that we're missing?
The strongman thing is an important feature. Just because I really think his worldview is that the world should be ruled by a few strong men sitting around a table, and he's going to be the brightest of the bulbs there, and he's going to be such a happy camper, and everybody else doesn't count. When you were talking about dignity earlier today, that dignity's not there. You know, everybody's to serve that table of people.
Okay.
You know, from his point of view. But there was a second part, and I forgot what it was.
Well, so let's assume that strongman urge, Trump, leads him to total abandonment of Ukraine, cutting a deal that is totally on the terms of Putin. What happens to Ukraine without a deep well of support from the United States?
Yeah, you just brought the second point I was thinking. The second point is that Ukraine has become very dependent on the military support. And so there, when I said the government support, what people are afraid or fear is the weaponry will not be there. Without the weaponry, then everything else sort of falls to pieces. So you need the weaponry. So Ukraine has now started diversifying. They've got their own missiles going. They've got their own drone manufacturer working. They're working with Europe. So they're already, from the strategic point of view, widening their dependence or their support from looking at the U.S., who happen to have the best military stuff going. You know,
that's the voice of Vsevolod Petriv. He's the president of the Boston chapter of Ukrainian Congress Committee. He's joined here by Brian Nolan, who is founder of New Hampshire for Ukraine.
Brian, I read in one of our producers spoke with you, and I think you said that some of the weaponry we were supplying had been built in 1973.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
I really fault the Biden administration for not messaging this properly. People don't understand how the money is being spent. The military aid that we're giving them is primarily weapons that are approaching their expiration date.
Yeah.
We're out visiting an artillery unit near the front, and they had a huge pile of these metal cases that they shipped the artillery shells in from the U.S. So we took a couple as war trophies. I've got a pile of war trophies in my apartment in Kharkiv.
It's in your box over there, too, I think.
Yeah, there we go. And so I looked at the casing, and it's manufactured 1973. That is a 50-year-old artillery shell. That's the lifespan of a shell. We can either pay Raytheon or some other company to destroy it or give it to Ukraine. The same thing with the Attacker missiles, the Abrams tanks, or the old generation. We're getting rid of all our used clothing, so to speak.
Did you bring a drone with you in that
brought
box?
What did you
bring?
All sorts of stuff in the box.
It's a drone that the military unit gave me over there. They picked it up off the battlefield. You know, there's nothing spectacular about this other than.
Can we get the camera on Brian over there? And there it is. Okay.
This is the new face of warfare in Ukraine. This is what it's all about.
And they're manufacturing a lot of their own, are they not?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. I work with a guy. He's got a little shop, a secondary business. He cranks out about 150 a month of these. We give him a hand once in a while. He's got a 3D printer. They make everything. So this is the new face of warfare. About 70 or 80% of the injuries over there are incurred by drone strikes nowadays, not artillery or bullets.
What is life like for the? You're in Kharkiv for a year.
Yes.
I mean, when there are far too few news stories now from war zones. Obviously, Gaza almost not at all, but not nearly enough from Ukraine. When you see life going on, at least for me, who doesn't have the courage of you, I should be. Well, I mean, it happens to be true. I don't think I could move there and live there for a year and be delivering goods across the country. I don't think so. But in any case, and you see everyday life, people shopping. Going, what is like life every day like in Kharkiv?
It's something else. You know, when we first went over there early in the war, we crossed the border and we thought there was going to be missiles raining down and bombs. And we went to Lviv. That's on the west end of the country. Life was relatively normal. You get used to the air raid sirens. In Kharkiv, they go off all the time. People basically just ignore them. They carry on with their soccer games. And if you went into an air raid shelter every time there was an air raid alert, you'd never get anything done.
But we were talking to Liz Walker a couple of minutes ago about trauma in this country. She was originally began in Roxbury, where she was head of the Roxbury Presbyterian Church. Is there not a low level of trauma, even if people are not conscious of it?
Oh, I think
everybody?
So. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of scars left on people's psyches when this is over.
The kids get it. I mean, what are kids like?
I feel sorry for the kids. They're the one, because if you think about it, they went from COVID isolation to all online schools because Russia was bombing the schools. So in Kharkiv, they've just built, I think, like a dozen or half a dozen underground schools, fortified.
Underground.
Which is, it's pretty twisted if you think about it, that you have to do that. But at least they have some social contact there. But these kids, there's going to be a lot of trauma, a lot of scars for decades coming.
And they are
this war.
working with youth organizations trying to get the kids out off to the west or out, western part of Ukraine or into Belarus or other places just to get them out of the direct war zone. But the whole mental health picture is a new place for aid in Ukraine because the Ukrainians there tend to have you don't need mental health, you just tough it out, the attitude. And so trying to work that attitude and how to deal with soldiers who are injured, and that's becoming a big issue.
Yeah, the trauma among the soldiers is just going to be so long lasting because in an old-fashioned war, you just had bullets and artillery primarily. Now you've got drones out there. You can be sleeping in a trench at midnight and a grenade falls out of the sky. A drone with thermal imaging can drop something. You don't get a break for a minute from worrying about a drone coming in. It's totally changed warfare. I can't imagine what these guys go through. We go there for a day, and it's pretty harrowing sometimes. I can't imagine these guys will go on 3-week rotations in a trench.
Brian Nolan, we mentioned poll numbers for President Zelensky, when he came back from that disgraceful performance by Vance and Trump in the Oval Office. Forget numbers for a second. The average person in your community, how do they feel about him and his leadership?
In Ukraine?
In Ukraine, yeah.
Ukraine. Mixed. It's like any political situation. There's people that voted for him, didn't vote for him. But what was funny is I know people that did not vote for him and didn't want to vote for him again when there's an election. Now they're going to vote for him just to spite.
Because of the Trump animus? Is that really true?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's what's happening in Canada today, as far as we know also.
Yeah, exactly.
That is
it's
incredible.
inflamed so many, just to stick it to the White House, they're going to do that.
And Sevelo, what is the first time, I didn't know of him then, but obviously we go back and see him in these comedy television shows, and you can't believe this is the same courageous guy. What do people believe? What do Ukrainians believe has motivated him? The rumors, as you know, when the invasion started, he's getting out of the country. He's going to somewhere in Western Europe. He's going to be gone in a nanosecond. Not only is he not gone, he visits troops on the front lines almost every day.
Yeah, that was
what motivates this guy?
I think he woke up. I mean, let me back up. One thing I think that motivated him and motivates him to stand up to Trump is that in the onset of the invasion, he was the one that was believing Putin. He was the one that's saying, oh, no, we're going to negotiate. There won't be a war. Don't panic. It's all going to be fine. And that's where some of the people who say they're not going to vote for him, because they still remember those early moves. And they said, you weren't ready to go. But then when it hit, he pulled it together. And he said, I need ammunition, I don't need a ride. And his famous quote.
Yeah, I think he's right.
That was a great line.
And
that
part has made it work for him.
You mentioned before about going to the Europeans because they're Ukrainians are going to the Europeans because of what the United States kind of pulling the rug out from underneath them. Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think that they could rescue this situation if Trump does not come through, which he probably won't?
We're going to find out.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is Putin is still attacking. And it's been said so many times that it's almost boring. But, if Russia stops, the war is over. Ukraine is not trying to take Russia. They don't care. But if Ukraine stops, then Putin will come right in. And Europe is afraid that if he comes in there, what's going to stop him from coming after the rest of us, especially the first Baltic states and then everybody else, because there is an overall mission of you want to take out the democratic point of view. You want to get to the point of view where you have the all-powerful leader and everybody else serves. And so Europe has a real vested interest. So do we. And, we have gained, as I said, we're getting rid of our old equipment and getting new equipment due to this. We're getting training, as the U.S. Our guys are learning all about this new warfare without losing people and taking the chances. So the Soviet army, the Russian army has been, much more weakened and decimated. So we're winning here on this side.
Yeah, but he has the North Koreans. I mean,
he had to call North Koreans, and he's not doing well.
Is it a million Russians at this point? I think I've read 1 million.
Who've lost their lives?
Lost their
over
lives.
900, but
And he's got
900,000.
people running out of leaving the country, and
So, unlike Brian, who brought a drone but won't give it to us, you apparently, the 2 times you've been here, Sevalode, you've been kind enough to leave us with something. You about to give us something today?
I am about
What
to
are you
give you
doing?
something. I have, we have a group called the Ukrainian American Youth Association. And the women in that group get together and make these Easter eggs, Ukrainian Easter eggs. And we're still in the
Really
Easter egg
beautiful.
thing. So they
they're
gave
really
me an
beautiful.
Easter egg apiece.
Those are
You could
gorgeous.
choose who wants which one.
They are beautiful.
And they asked me to pass them over.
These are
Those
hand-
are
are these painted?
gorgeous.
Is that what
Yes, it's
God.
the word is pisanka.
Excuse me? Say that again?
Pisanka.
Okay. that's
Okay,
easy
those
for you
are
to say.
eggs that
Here,
were
Robert.
written on.
Can you see this?
Wow.
And
Here? Can you get
it's
close up? It is gorgeous.
I think mine is prettier.
and it's
That is really
well, I was being a
beautiful.
little sexist.
But
I
go
gave you the
ahead.
flowers
Yeah,
and I
I think
gave
this
you
one
the
is
geometric design.
Can you
But-
see mine? I don't know if you can see
You
mine.
can eat Jim's for lunch to get
That's
that.
right. Yeah. There's mine.
No, there's no egg in there.
That's good. Brian, tell people how they can get in touch with you if they want to help in any way they can.
So our website is probably the best way. NH4 Ukraine. We also have MA4Ukraine.org. So for those people who might not like our Republican governor or something like that, they can feel better. They can do mass number 4 Ukraine or MA. We're on
.org.
Facebook under NH4 Ukraine, Instagram.
Are you going back?
I am. I'm home till about June 20th. I'm just here to do a bunch of fundraising talks. I do a lot of Rotary clubs. If anybody knows a Rotary club church group that might want a presentation, we'll come in and do anything from a half hour to...
Before you go, tell us
hour and a
quickly how much you pay per month for 1-bedroom apartment in Hartlepool.
$240.
$240. Life is good. More Americans should consider retiring there. Yeah, $3 a month for gig internet.
Brian,
It's
thank
a
you. It's really
bargain.
good to meet you.
Yeah,
Thanks
it's
for
great to
being
meet
here.
you
And
guys.
Sevalode, as
Yeah,
always, it's
thank you
wonderful to
both.
see you
That's
again.
great.
Thank
Very
you so
much for coming in. We've been speaking with Sevalode Petriv, president of the Boston chapter of the Ukrainian Congress Committee, and Brian Nolan, who has been going back and forth to Ukraine for 3 or 4 years
3
now?
years since the
3
beginning
years
of the war.
now.
Yeah.
Founder of New Hampshire for Ukraine A Group. Here's the website, NH4Ukraine.org. That's NH4, the number 4, Ukraine.org. Thank you both for coming in.
Great to see you both.
After a
Thanks so
quick
much.
break, another BPR awkward transition. We're opening the lines to talk about Bill Belichick, that interview on CBS Sunday morning where his 24-year-old girlfriend shuts down a line of questioning from off camera. Are we wrong with being obsessed
No.
with this romance? If so, we don't want it to be right. The lines are open next, 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, labor advocates have released their annual report on worker deaths and illnesses in the Commonwealth. The Massachusetts House